Okay, so moving on to the synths and the music parts of this track. Let's have a quick play of them. Okay, so you'll see you've got kind of four main parts. I'm going to start with this pad, which is made from this operator, which is Ableton's built-in FM synth. It's quite a simple patch, and if I just play it to you without any of the effects or any of the note effects. Here it sounds pretty basic and pretty boring. So, in operator, this is literally just a saw D, which when you look at this kind of spectral visualization of the sound, it's a saw with each partial fully active, and you can draw these back in. It changes the sound ever so slightly, but let's just keep it like that. And so what we've got here is, this shows you how these oscillators to A, B, C and D are routed. So at the moment you will hear A oscillator, which is at the end of the chain, and each of these before it will frequency modulate the next oscillator in the chain. So at the moment you'll see that C and D can be pretty much turned off. Their levels are minus infinity, so they're doing nothing. And B is slightly detuned by 5 cents. It's on the same ratio, so it's the same fundamental note as the A oscillator, and it's just bringing up some upper harmonics ever so slightly. So without it and with it, you'll notice that the fine tune gives it a little bit of movement, which is kind of phasing created by just having the same oscillator detuned against itself. Just makes the sound a little bit more interesting. And that's all being routed. A is being routed to this low pass filter, which I've automated throughout the tune. You'll see it's just building up, coming down, building up, coming down. So over here it will sound a lot brighter. Okay. And what you'll have noticed there is that some of these notes don't sound great, especially in context with the rest of the tune. This upper B here just sounds out of key. So a great little tip with Ableton is especially for making pad sounds, you can make a really nice full rich pad sound with just single notes, like here. Firstly, in MIDI effects, using this chord effect, I'll put another one in there. That's the basic, how it will look when you first drag it in. And then all I've done in this one is made just a basic minor chord. So it's going up 5 semitones, and there's another note which is 7 semitones from the fundamental, or -5 here, which is essentially the same as +7 from the octave below. And just to fill it out, I've put in another octave below. So I'll show you that. Move that one down to 12. You can hear that lower note coming in. This one up to 5 to make the chord. And then this one -5. So it's giving it the 7 semitones above the fundamental. But what you'll hear is, especially this note still sounds like a bum note. And a great thing with Ableton is that you can use this scale MIDI effect, and the preset you'll want to use is C minor. Pop that in there. This is how it will look when you first load it up, and what you want to do is set this bass key to the same as your track. So you'll see I've set it to G, and what this does, it constrains any notes that come through it to only be in the key that we have set here. So these chords, even though some of them sound terrible, this will put them, all of the notes, back into the right scale, which is G, and thus sound lovely in our track, and you'll hear the difference. So this is with it. And this is without. And it's a great little cheat, especially if you're not incredibly musical like me. Just allows you to make sure that everything sounds nice and in key with everything else. So all of those have gone together to create a really nice rich pad sound. And we've got a slight bit of processing on this. Just thinning it out ever so slightly around this sort of muddy area, 200 Hertz, and just obviously thought that there was slightly too much of this mid-range, and then we don't need too much in the top, so just cut a bit off there. Not too much processing on this pad, and this mid-side splitter is another little handy little tip. So I'll create one of these here so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. So essentially what this does is it splits this channel into a mono signal on this chain and the side signal on this chain, and that means you can affect, by putting the your effects on this chain or this chain, you can affect the mid or the side separately, the mono and the stereo separately. I'll quickly show you how to make one of those. Go to your effects, get yourself a utility, pop that on there, and group it. Right click, group, and then if you hit here, that will show the chains. And what I'll do is duplicate that, so now we've got two chains, both with utilities on. And the first one, what I'll do is I'll reduce the width to 0, and that essentially makes it a mono signal going through here, and I shall call that mid slash mono, or mid and mono. It's come through as mid or mono. There we go. Just because I don't want you to confuse the fact that mid could also be referring to the mids of the frequency spectrum. We're not talking about that, we're talking about the mid or the mono channel. So it's everything down the center, and this, what I will do is push this width up 200%, and what that does is it just takes away all of the mono and leaves us only with stereo or the side channel. So you can call that stereo or side. And so what this allows us to do is to affect the mids or the sides separately. And on this particular track, going back to this one, all I've done is just reduce the gain ever so slightly on the mid channel. The side has been left as it is, and that just means that there's slightly less of this pad in the middle channel, and that's just leaving a bit more space for everything that is in the middle channel to come through, and it just de-muddy the thing a bit. So for example, the kick will be coming through there and the snare will be coming mainly through the mids, and we don't want this pad to be conflicting with those, so just brought that down a bit. But other uses of this, you could sidechain just the mid channel, or you could maybe distort the side channel a little bit to bring out the stereo of your track. There's lots of uses, and obviously you can take this little chain and drop it in your presets folder and use it on your own tracks.